tonight, so appreciate everybody coming out. I'm going to give everybody a second here to get seated, but thank you for coming. We're calling this our community conversation number 3, and I'm the Ojai City Manager, James Vega. We started this year. I just want to talk a little bit about the community conversation and then the purpose of today's meeting. But Chief Rivera and I this year started in January. We committed to the public that we were going to have a series of community conversations about public safety and try to help engage with the community and talk about the problems that people are seeing that we might not be seeing, or talking about what we're doing, how the different roles we play in different circumstances. And so we've had 2 of these conversations so far. Today is community conversation number 3. And today, the first 2 sessions were mostly about police services, but today we want to talk to the community about disaster preparedness. And it ties into a project that I think a lot of people were here for last week as well for a meeting, a project where we are creating a community disaster guide. One of the things that we have heard consistently is that a lot of people don't know all the resources that the city has during an emergency, or don't know all the different roles and how the agencies interact during an emergency. And we've committed to creating a disaster guide to try to help people understand that, and also to help them get prepared for the next emergency. So we've been working on this guide. Robin Godfrey, our interim assistant city manager, she's going to walk us through a little bit of that guide in a moment, so I won't get too far into that at this point. But it is a lesson we learned from the Thomas Fire, which was about 5 years ago, that a lot of the community said they didn't know what they were supposed to do. They didn't know who to look to for information. They didn't know who was doing what. So we are trying to help people understand that, and also address one of the elephant in the rooms, which is that if a fire happened on a Saturday and we had 10,000 visitors, they wouldn't know where Nordhoff was. They wouldn't know what we're talking about when we say get to Nordhoff. They wouldn't know what we're talking about when we say, go east to get out of town. And so the guide is to help them be better prepared, but also to help our residents and our community know where to look, where to get accurate information, and be prepared. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And before we start that, I do want to thank Chief Rivera and Chief Parker from our wonderful police and fire departments. And I want to ask them each to take a moment to introduce themselves and to talk a little bit about their role in disaster preparedness. So I don't remember who I was supposed to introduce first. Let's see. Chief Parker.
Good morning. My name is Barry Parker. I'm a division chief with the Ventura County Fire Department, and your local fire chief in Ojai. It is a pleasure to serve the community here. I grew up in Ventura, so I am local to the area. I spent about 3 years here as a firefighter, and I spent 2 years as a battalion chief, and specifically during the Thomas Fire. So I have lived a lot of life with you through some of the disasters here. And while they're definitely traumatic, we are preparing ourselves daily. So what the county fire department does is we spend time with the community. We spend time training, drilling, and being prepared. A part of that preparation involves all of us working together, collaborating, finding consensus so that we can be successful at a moment's notice. So your county fire department provides you with the proper tools, equipment, and professionally trained firefighters here locally in Ojai Valley.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Jose Rivera. I'm a captain with the Ventura County Sheriff's Office, and I am your chief of police here in Ojai. I've been here for almost 3 years. And like I tell my wife, when I leave in the morning, I'm going to my second home. It's been wonderful here. I've really enjoyed working here. It's a great community. And the best part is that we have a lot of community involvement. and a lot of city leaders that do care very deeply about the community. So like I mentioned, I've been here for just over 3 years, or almost 3 years, but I've been with the Sheriff's Office for 32 years. So it's been a great career. I really enjoyed myself. Mainly working with the community has been fantastic. So the role for the Sheriff's Department during a disaster would be to work with the different agencies that do respond to certain disasters, whether it be a fire, flooding, or an earthquake. Whatever the disaster is, we're there to assist in any capacity that we can with traffic, assisting with rescues, or assisting residents to get them information on where they need to go, where they can find additional information, and just being out there to the community as a resource. So, we play a big role. It's kind of like driving a car, and without the Sheriff's Department or the fire department there, you're missing a wheel to make that car roll down the street. So in terms of a disaster, it's important that we work with fire, we work with all the different city entities to make disaster less disastrous for our community, to be there for them as support and guidance, and get them, make sure that they're safe. Our number one priority is ensuring that everybody is safe, and get them out of a dangerous situation, a dangerous zone, and to get them the help that they need. So with that, thank you.
Thank you, Chief Parker and Chief Rivera. I do want to thank, when we're working on this preparedness guide, we had a meeting last week, and we had partners from the county Office of Emergency Services. We had partners from the Humane Society and Animal Services. We had different partners in, because as Chief Rivera and Chief Parker just said, when an emergency happens, we all play a role and we all have to work together. One of the things I think we know in Ojai, and we're kind of used to in Ojai, is that we are the whole of the donut, is what we call it. And if there is an emergency, we're going to be working with the county. We're going to be working with the fire department. We're going to be working with the police department. We're going to be working across agencies. I think we've developed a really good relationship doing that, but that is part of what we're trying to help the public understand. And so the public knows who to look to for information, and who they should be working with and who they should be talking to. So our disaster guide, our community disaster guide, is going to help explain some of that. And so I will hand it over to Robin Godfrey, who will talk a little bit about that. While she's coming up, I will just note for everybody that we know that getting here Wednesday at 9 a.m. is difficult, especially anybody who was here last night, which I see several of you. And so we are recording this. We are planning to put it on our website, on our TV station, and our radio station. And with the goal of, we want to get this information to as many people as possible. And also at some point, Robin's going to ask for some feedback, and we want to get that feedback from as many people as possible as well. So when we have some of those parts of the meeting, we're going to hand microphones and ask people to make sure they're speaking into the mic so that the TV and radio hear you. So I just wanted to get everybody ready for that. And here is Robin Godfrey.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And thank you for coming on Wednesday morning. As James said, we are televising this. We will put it out on social media, and we'd like to encourage all of our stakeholders who are here and community members to please share this information. In addition, we are going to repeat an event like this, but a little bit bigger and better during Disaster Preparedness Month, which is in September. So we don't have a date for that yet, but it will be on a weekend and most likely at Libby Park. So keep posted on that. We'll have additional goodies for you at that point. But why don't we go ahead, Weston, and start? I just have a couple of slides for you before we get going. I'm going to ask you guys a couple of questions, and then we'll get to the main purpose of this event, which is really to hear from everyone who's here. Thank you. I probably could have done that. So can I see how many people were here for our last disaster event? Or how many people have been to a coffee with the chief? Okay, well, I'm glad you were there. Okay, so preparing for disaster. Next slide, please. So we said this before and it's worth repeating, but when disaster looms, things are complicated. We're a small city. We rely on county police and fire protection. We have a very engaged local group of citizens, and then we also have some unique needs. So we're going to talk about the importance of being prepared and kind of how we all work together. And I think, yes.
Could you explain who you are and who the city staff is here today for those of us who might not know?
I would love to do that. My name is Robin Godfrey. I'm the interim assistant city manager. You heard from James Vega. He's the city manager. Chief Rivera is the Ojai Police Chief. And what is your official title again? Captain, excuse me. We call you Chief, but we have Barry Parker from Ventura County Fire. And then the back end here, we have Weston Montgomery, and he is our communications and special events coordinator. And you may have James Hahn back there too, who is our IT guru who makes everything work. James Hahn, yes. You're welcome. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. So as I mentioned, it's all about collaboration. So as a small city, we value the partnerships that help us prepare for and respond to disaster. So when something happens significant, we're going to look to the County of Ventura, our local disaster lead, and they work arm in arm with the city. So we follow Ventura County, but then we localize information to suit the needs of our community. So we have other partners as well, though, that are really important. I know James mentioned some of them, the school district, the disaster council, the city council and staff, the Ojai Hospital, the Humane Society, our local news providers, ham radio operators, many, many others. And it takes all of us to collaborate and look at how we can serve residents the best. Next slide, please. So one of the most important lessons that we learned from the Thomas Fire was that our community needed to know where to get accurate information. There were a lot of rumors flying around. There was misinformation. We had people that were truly trying to help sharing information, but maybe it wasn't the correct version. Maybe it wasn't timely. So that's a big goal of ours right now, is to help the larger community connect with resources that can be trusted. Everybody should have this handout here. We're going to be promoting this widely. These are our trusted resources. We encourage you to sign up for My Ojai, to sign up for VC Alert, and we can help you with those things if you're not signed up yet, and to get familiar with the websites that you will use when disaster strikes. Sometimes when things are scary and you're trying to get out the door, you're not going to be thinking about all this stuff. So now's the time to really get comfortable. So let's do a quick poll right now. If smoke were coming over the hill at this very moment, we would just like to hear where the people in the audience and stakeholders too, where you would go for information. And I get you guys are going to know, but where's the first place that you would go to try to get information? And anybody just chime in. I'm going to write this down on the board. Okay. Any others? Okay. Are there any social media sites that you go to regularly?
I know we're in a Thomas Fire Facebook.
Yeah.
And, in some cases not, but it's to connect us. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They did that other thing. Got some pictures from to avoid.
Okay. For the audience that's not here today, we have calling the fire department, VC emergency, messages delivered directly to one's cell phone, the Ojai Valley News website, and then Facebook for checking in, getting pictures, and getting the kind of up-to-date information. Yes. AM 1610, and that's going to be on your handout sheet here too. Yes, please, my Ojai. Anybody else? This is great. Now, everybody, I hope, has this handout right here. Oh, you do not have this handout. Oh. Yes, we can. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yes. When we talk about the emergency guide, we're going to talk about that a little bit too, because it will be accessible, which will be a helpful thing. Okay. So next slide, please. So moving forward with that in mind, we have put together some information right here that's showing the trusted city and county communication resources. So like we mentioned before, these are the places to go for information. Please keep them handy. And to sign up for BC Alert and My Ojai and community outreach. And we have learned time and time again that in a community like Ojai, word of mouth is the best way to get information out through our trusted messengers, those folks in the community that know everybody and want to share information. So I encourage all of you to share this. And when we talk about our guide, we'll have that available to share too. Next slide, please. So preparedness. Preparedness is key. And when we had our earlier meetings and met with our stakeholders, that's the one thing we heard, that is when I'm prepared, when you're prepared, that helps the hospital, that helps the Humane Society, that helps our neighbors, because we don't have resources that are being drawn away to assist with little things that we can manage ourselves. So please, everybody, be prepared. On the back of this sheet, you'll see an emergency checklist. Also, readyventuracounty.org is a great site. They will help you put together your emergency supplies. They really go deep into this information, but this list is pulled from their site. So it's a good place to start. And yes, being prepared, it allows public safety and healthcare providers, again, to help more people. We can't say that enough. We kept hearing that over and over. Next slide, please. So pulling it all together, and James mentioned this, but the city is putting together a brief disaster guide. And this is not to replicate any of the wonderful information that our partner agencies have already produced. You can find that, on the Ventura County website, but it's so we can have something that's a little bit more localized that you can pick up and look at and know what to do and where to go at a glance when disaster strikes. So we've had a couple of meetings with our stakeholders and we've put together a draft of this guide. I'm going to talk a little bit about the types of things that are in it, but what I'd like to do, yes. Let me tell you about stakeholders. Yeah. Thank you. No, that's a really good reminder. So our stakeholders are people that really play an important role in serving the community during disaster. So not just the city, not just the county, but the school district and these other folks that we mentioned. So thank you for that. Yeah. Sometimes we suffer from city speak. It happens to the best of us. So this disaster guide is going to be a short run print book and an ebook. So the ebook we will make so it will be accessible for readers. We're going to distribute it on web, social media, email, in person, and through our trusted messenger. So we really want to get this out into the community. We will be hosting an event kind of like this, but bigger in September, not November. And we're going to have a booth at Ojai Day in October. And this will all be part of a larger Stay Safe Ojai campaign. So you're going to be hearing a lot about this over the next few months. Yes. Yes, it will be a living document. I'll say yes and no. We're going to do some short run prints because people do like to have print copies, and we'll probably update those like maybe quarterly or as needed. Might not be needed that much. The online version will be a living document. So we can make changes. They will automatically appear online using the same link that you've always had. Okay, next slide. Is that it? Okay, so what I'd like to put out there now is in our guide, we've talked to the school district and we've talked to the Humane Society and we've gotten, and the hospital, we've gotten some information. We're working on compiling that and putting it together so it kind of reflects very simply what our community has to offer. But we'd like to hear from some of you. What is going to be most important to you? When smoke's coming over the hill again and you need information, what is it that you're going to be looking for right away? Yes. Face masks. Okay. Mhm. Okay, yes. When will you know to evacuate? Okay. Yes, am I a terrible scribe?
No.
Okay. That's good. And when in the discussion part of this, yeah, in the discussion part of this conversation, I'm referring to evacuation. I'm sure that Chief Parker will talk a little bit more about that, and our guide is going to talk about that as well. But it's super important to wait for the official notice, and we'll talk more about that in a sec. Yes. Where to evacuate? Thank you. Thank you, Weston. Yeah. Do you leave or do you shelter in place? Well, he's much better at that than me. Okay, and where to go?
Not just where to go to, but the actual address for people who, like you said, are visiting and do not know
Okay,
where that is.
yes.
People that are disabled are going to have, oh, I'm sorry. People that are disabled are going to have a really hard time finding a lot of this stuff. I can walk everywhere in town, but I can't always find this building, for example,
Sure.
or the gym. And if we don't have extremely explicit instructions and advance warning, you all can see the fire coming over the thing. I can't.
Right.
I can smell the smoke, but where in the world is it coming from? Is it somebody's barbecue? So, I mean, and there's supposed to be a county where you sign up and you got information. I got no information from the Thomas Fire that anything was going on. The thing I signed up for that was supposed to help people with disabilities did not function.
Okay, that's really good information. Thank you. Susan has a question behind you there?
Are we making suggestions for?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I would highly recommend that when next time you go to Ventura, take an alternate route. There's at least 5 alternate routes and a lot of people don't know them. And so if you see a lot of congestion ahead, especially if it's a weekend and the town is filled with tourists, you will know the secret route out of Ojai. There are some very interesting, and it takes a little longer, but it's worth the extra half hour getting to Ventura if you learn those routes now.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, but she's got the mic right there. So.
To that end, it might not be a bad idea to have that on the website that you're going to put up here, or, the ebook, either one, these different routes. I mean, I know a lot of different routes, but I agree with you. I mean, when we had people having to route through here because of the closure on 101,
Yes.
you couldn't get in or out of town.
Good recommendation, and we do have those in the book. And I'm going to just put a little add on here that if a fire or another emergency strikes, Ventura County Fire is going to recommend which route we should take. They'll recommend if there are stops along the way, and we'll talk more about that in a second.
And I just wanted to confirm that we are working, James, together with the Office of Emergency Services to identify the best refuge spots, correct? Okay.
Correct.
So the guide that we are preparing has refuge locations.
Okay. Thank you so much for doing that. Much appreciated.
Yes. Mhm. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
An emergency ways. In other words, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Where you could just, I don't know the technology behind that, but it's so great.
Yeah,
Where they know where you are and everyone gets their own route.
that is a very cool idea. Look into that. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said it's having emergency ways where we use that same technology. And so everyone has the right route for their situation where they are right at the moment.
For anyone who doesn't know, Waze is an app, a directional app that my kids use, and it tells you how to get from point A to point B. I know this is hard.
Somebody mentioned coming into Ojai.
Mhm.
What warns all the people to not come into Ojai because there's no way out?
So one of the tools that we will use in the sheriff and the city, we have emergency message boards. Wrong word. We have portable e-trailers
Right.
that we'll place on the key roads and let people know.
And my last follow-up question.
Mhm.
is where will you place them? Will you place them before they cannot have to come into town, or do you place them before they can't turn around? Like if you go up the road from Santa Paula
Mhm.
and you go up the grade and where are you going to turn around?
Yeah.
Okay, so the signs have to be before they get to the cutoff.
Good recommendation.
Speaking of tourists,
Mhm.
we have thousands of them in our town on any given day. And I just wonder who is coordinating between the stakeholders in this room and the management of all the hotels and motels in our city.
That is part of what the city is doing with this guide. And our thought is that a lot of people who are here for the weekend or maybe the first time, they're not going to know, as James said, where the high school is. They're not going to understand the routes. So we are putting in very simple layperson's language, just what they need to do. And we'll be getting these booklets to all the hotels. We'll also be making sure that they all have links to the living version of it. So our goal with outreach is to really hit that sector of our community pretty hard.
Good, good.
You're probably already doing this, but just a question. Are you maybe having classes or something for people who will volunteer to help you during this time for different things like maybe rescuing animals or, or driving them someplace, whatever?
That sounds to me, and James, you might want to jump in to talk about CERT.
Yeah. So as part of all these efforts, one of the things we've done, the city has a disaster council, and we meet quarterly and talk about goals. And one of the goals we had was to get CERT running again. CERT is the Community Emergency Response Team, I think is what the T stands for. And that's the one where kind of valley-wide, they have volunteers and they activate. And actually, I see some of our attendees that are more familiar with it even than I am, I think, that are members of it. But so we've been meeting with the county. Right now, CERT is operated through Supervisor Lavier's office. And so he's been participating and his office has been participating, and they're going to be trying to get that activated. So that is a goal for us.
Yes.
Yeah. So they are listed right now, and there's a couple things on the ebook. We talked about it being a living document. It's like we're including it, we're giving information, but we're hoping that once it's activated, we are able to even get more information in the book. So.
Just an idea, because it really hit me, people who are disabled. Maybe with help of Ojai, can we have maybe volunteers if something does happen like this? We know where everybody is, and individually we can go out and if all the disabled find those people and take care. Anybody in a situation, if we had a group and we go, okay, who's your five? Let's take care of our people who can't function.
That's a wonderful idea. And I'd like to understand kind of what systems are in place, and maybe even we can talk after and kind of where those gaps are.
That would be fantastic. That's really important.
Yeah, and just to add to that, the minister in the church that I go to showed up at my neighbor's house the morning that we were notified that this fire was getting out of control. And I walked out of the parking lot. I said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "I'm talking to your neighbor and notifying her that there's a fire and we need to get to know her and get her to the evacuation center." So I just want you to know, I think this is a real critical issue with our seniors. We need to have an identification system or a tag or a neighborhood alert or community network that can look in and follow up on those people who have limited mobility. It shouldn't be just Help of Ojai's job. We've got to have an extended communication network that I think is really important.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And somebody sent in a written response. I don't know if that person is here today that talked just about that, the importance of having neighborhood driven networks. But that's something I think we'd like to learn more about and maybe share some resources with the community.
I don't mean to take over things or anything, but worked for the phone companies. And I think it's important for people to understand that during these times, they are not going to get texts or calls in or out because the phone company tags emergency numbers so that they can get through. So people who think they're texting someone, it's really not going anywhere. So they have to understand that they can't depend on that. That's, you know.
Sorry. That's really helpful. And I wanted to make the point because we learned that during the Thomas fire, the first day, our radio station burnt down, and then the cell phone tower at some point, people have different reception and everything, but it went out for a lot of people, and we never really figured out, was it AT&T, was it Verizon, was it both? But it went out. People weren't able to get the VC alerts, because of that, and things like that. So that is really important. And in our guide, we have kind of our technological tools. But I think the thing we learned during Thomas fire is we need to have non-technological tools, like our signboards out at the grocery stores and the message board on the road. So we are trying to put an emphasis on that in the plan.
I have the microphone back here. One really important point that Barry, I think you brought up last time, is that period of time when we know that something's happening, when we have no information and we're on our own. So I think it's really important that we keep repeating that message. Every individual needs to be prepared and have a plan and have a bag packed and have the animals ready to go, and be resilient in that way.
That's a great point, Betsy. And we just added some more language about that in the guide, because I think what you say, 6 hours or so is kind of the average. We should be prepared the first, 6 hours when nobody really knows what's going on, to not be getting information. So that's when we need to just be safe and have our supplies and be ready to go. So thank you. Okay.
There's a lot to that question. I'll try to answer quickly. Is one of the things that cities and counties actually will tend to have like a satellite phone or something for an emergency. As far as like on a wider scale for everyone, we'd have to do some research. I don't know that we have that handy. Although we did approve a new cell tower yesterday, so that might help us. Yeah.
Okay.
I can sort of answer that question only because like I said, I work for AT&T and actually Verizon, but it's not that they went out, the towers, it's that they were flooded. So they started only allowing emergency agencies through because that was more important. So it's good to understand that. As far as having a satellite, I sort of understand that too, because like I said, I'm retired from there. That would be flooded too. And I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong on that they also do the same thing. As soon as you have an emergency in the area, they're only going to allow emergency in and out. So like Red Cross could be in Ventura and you need them to get to, be able to get to Ojai. They're going to allow Red Cross to get through, but you could be standing right next to Red Cross. You're not going to get through. And that's important. Then I actually had a question. Do we have a siren? Emergency siren? I don't know.
Yeah, so that's actually included in our plan too, and with recognition to the chief here, we have it's been about a year now, so it's not new maybe, but the sheriff's department has launched a new specific siren for evacuations. What's it called? The high-low siren. And so if you're ever in town, and that's one of the goals with this is we have it, now we need to tell people we have it. And so if you're ever in town and you hear a siren that all of a sudden sounds different, and I think what it sounded like to me was almost like the European sirens. So you hear a European siren and you go, well, wait a minute, we don't have a European siren. That means there's something going on and we're evacuating. So we actually have an evacuation siren on the sheriff's vehicles now within the valley. So. Yeah, and we actually have a video. We'll make it. We'll add that link.
It might take a minute or two, but we can. Yeah.
And we'll add the link to the emergency guide, so when people are reading it, they can click and hear what it sounds like, because we actually have a video demonstrating it on our website. So, I think they've got the microphone.
Thank you. I have a thing about the siren. I lived in Hawaii for a while, and they had a siren that went off, I can't remember, once a month at a specific day and a specific time. So people knew that they had to evacuate the beaches and get up from potential tidal waves. And other communities have their fire sirens come off at certain times so that the community hears it. And if it's at a specific time, nobody's going to freak out. And I'm wondering if we can do the same thing.
Yeah, so we have talked about that. There's a siren, I believe, and I was looking for Bob Daddy because he's got the whole history of it. Did he leave at some point? Okay. So Bob had brought that to the disaster council as well, that there's a siren, I think, at Lake Casitas, and that the idea of repurposing that for use. So that's something that we've talked about. We haven't gone all the way yet, and partially it's because when we got the sirens on the sheriff's vehicles, we figured we now had these portable sirens, but it's something we can keep looking at.
I assume that you're mostly talking about fire and earthquake, but we are faced with new challenges in our environment and so forth, and I'm just curious as to flooding, for instance. It hasn't happened in a lot of places that it's now happening in. So I'm just wondering if you can't prepare for everything, but what the thoughts are there.
Yeah, and so that's with the guide and the information we're trying to get from everybody. We are talking about all emergencies, right? If there's if flooding is coming, what are you going to do to get prepared? Where do you go for information? If fire is coming, if an earthquake happens, our response is going to be different to each of those and the people involved. We've talked about this for earthquake. It's actually going to be, there's going to be a lot more of the city having to take lead on things because it's going to be our building department and our building official and our staff. If it's a fire coming from outside of the city, it's going to be the Ventura County Fire Department who's the lead. So the reaction is going to be a little different to each of those, but the intent of what we're trying to do in preparedness and getting everybody to think about these things and be prepared, and then telling people where to go when things happen. We're trying to do kind of a universal guide. But I think the points we'll take in, whenever we say disaster, our first 20 minutes is on fire. But there's a lot of other potential disasters that we need to think about too. So after Larry, I think his hand's been up a while.
I was regarding chain of command. Okay, Ventura Fire Department, police. I mean, I think we've all seen movies where the sheriff says everybody stay put, and somebody says no, I'm leaving, and everybody who stays is dead. Okay, no, I'm trying to make a point of where not everybody is the smartest person in the room, and not every leader knows what's right. And I'm just trying to, ultimately you're responsible for your own safety and your own family. So right. It's like stay, but wait a minute, the fire's coming over the hill.
Yep.
But you'll clog the roads. That's nice. I'm going that way.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to find out how the chain of command, like who's directing.
Mm-hmm. You want to talk about when there's an evacuation order? We'll take the next question and then we'll let them.
I'm just trying to come up with suggestions that I think we haven't talked about classrooms. Wouldn't it be great if the schools, if the teachers kind of talk with the kids and how the families meet and the kids start learning and they bring information back home to their parents and then they come back to the classroom. It's kind of a way to, really kind of join in every family. And I think it's a way where they'll focus. Just an idea.
Yeah, I learned this during COVID. During COVID, especially when it first happened, was an opportunity where we put a lot of these different things into practice. And one of the things I didn't think about, because it's not that really like within my realm, is like communication to the school kids, right, and to their parents. So we had a conversation early on with the school district and the superintendent, and they were talking about the tools they have. And I saw in real time that they were able to get information to the kids that then got information to the parents like
Yes.
that. And it's actually, it's something like, was so effective. It's like everything we're trying to do. It's like, I still don't know if it's going to be as effective as telling the kids and their parents. And so we are trying to incorporate that. We have a meeting with the school district. I think it's in the next week or two to talk about how we can partner to work together with the school district to try to utilize.
Yeah, that's very important. There's got to be collaboration and not
Yeah.
division. That's
Yeah.
got to stop.
Exactly.
This is our kids. This is our community, and it'd be so beneficial to the whole valley.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
For a comment and a response, having worked at 2 schools here in the valley in the last 20 years, every school here has a really well-planned plan really to get out of here and what we do, whether we're going to shelter in place, we're going to stay in the dorms, or whether we're going to get out. And during the Thomas fire, I was at a school, and Barry was actually on duty and came in and saved us. And I know that the head of our school and the administrators were in really close contact. So it's there. You just have to go and ask. And I know Tiffany is, we work a lot with Tiffany, and it's really, having seen kids in a disaster, they're quite well behaved, and they tend to, they follow directions. They get on the bus, or they get under the desks, or whatever needs to happen. And so I feel really, of course, there's more work to be done in that area. It's actually happening. And so I think this is another example of something great that's happening that we need to celebrate and give the schools a big thumbs up. So thank you.
Yeah, I think the chain of command with kids is probably clearer than with adults, to Mr. Steingold's point.
Yeah.
So we had talked about talking to the private schools. I don't know that we have yet. We've been we were started with the public school. Mhm.
Coordinated situation. So I think it's really good,
Mhm.
not just they.
Mhm.
And I think it would be a good idea to have some drills. I mean, that Thomas, I don't want to be fair to this. That Thomas guy or something else we left out, but we should just do what ifs. Just practice.
Mhm.
Get it and see if it works. Pretend there's a fire. Let's make it. That's so important. That everyone has an idea and a little bit of anything.
Yeah.
So it's not so.
Yeah, at the last disaster council meeting, we talked about trying to coordinate a drill coming up, getting the guide done, and then doing a drill once we have that. Yep. We'll go with Renee, and then I'll.
Well, yeah, and maybe you're going to go ahead and answer it. And this is a follow-up to the chain of command question. When there was a meeting that was put on about 6 months ago publicly by the Ojai Valley Democratic Club, there was a comment that just piqued my interest about, we know that you're the emergency, you, James Vega, is the emergency officer for the city of Ojai. So we want to know, when you get the information, and if you're hearing it from the communication system from fire, where that fire is, and that a plan of action is already being prepared. We know we're going to hear from you. We want to know what you're going to say and where you're going to put that information. We don't want to go to Facebook, or we don't want to have a bunch of scary things start popping up. And I guess that's my question. You're going to be in close communications with the fire department and with the police department, because they're going to have to get on site and manage crowds, people, emergencies. But you're going to be the communication person to make sure the rest of us knows. That, to me, is the critical part, that we know we're going to hear from you and how we're going to hear from you.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that is at this point.
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah. And that's all, that's part of the point of the guide that we're preparing, is to explain how that works, explain the process. I can tell you, during Thomas Fire, we learned, and the county learned, that you said something about, so that bad information doesn't pop up. It's going to pop up. Like there's nothing to do to stop that. The key is keeping people informed with where to look and not looking at like not knowing where to go and then finding the bad information. And I'll give the example. This was a real example. On that Saturday of the Thomas fire, we held a community town hall meeting, and we live streamed the town hall meeting from Nordoff High School. And so I set up the live stream and I walked away for 20 minutes to go coordinate the meeting. And I came back and somebody had commented, "Why are you all in there? The fire's about to burn down the high school. You're all going to die." And so then there was 15 comments in that 20 minutes saying, "Oh my God, is that true? Get out, get out." And people are like saying like, my mom's at that place, So we had to go in and say, "We are here. The fire's not here. We wouldn't have called the meeting here if the fire was coming here, And so the bad information is going to be there. And that's why one of the most important pages in this guide, and it's the page that it's in the handout, is where to go for good information. Because you're going to find bad information, but you need to know, okay, I just saw this rumor. I need to go to the city page and the county page and confirm it or see if it's true. As far as answering the second part, or, the second part of your question, the information flows on a big event that's county-wide, or a fire coming through Miners Oaks or, Fillmore or wherever it's coming from. The information's flowing from the county to us from the start, we communicate, hey, the fire looks like it's on the way. It's not going to impact you, or it is, or we're monitoring it, or whatever it is. And so we say, and the county also says, the first place to look is VC Emergency, because that is going to be the first source. They have the countywide, they have people out countywide. They're getting the best data. What happened during the Thomas fire and kind of how this works is they're communicating to us, and, people don't know the things that almost happened, and one of the things that almost happened at the Thomas fire was 4 or 5 times we got a call and they said, this thing is burning, or, we think this thing's going to burn, or we think this thing's going to happen. And we went out and we're like, no, it's not. Like the fire's not there, And one situation in particular was, it was communicated to us that the city was about to be evacuated. And what it turned out was Miners Oaks was about to be evacuated. And we had to explain, like, the Miners Oaks is not the city of Ojai. And so if we say everybody in the city of Ojai get out, you're getting the wrong people out, So we worked through that process, but I think we all saw, and I think it's probably even more true today than 5 years ago, the 15 minutes we're taking to work through that process and get the information, there's already so much bad information out there. And so it is always going to be a struggle. I think me and police and fire have always talked about this. I think it's going to be the ongoing struggle, is like, we can't keep up with the bad information. So we just have to get people used to and almost prepared to how to find the good information. So we are going to make sure that we're working with the county. We're putting that out, we're getting it out. And by trying to get people familiar with where to look, we are hoping that they get the good information. So, yeah.
This list in general, some people like social media. We did not have a Twitter account during Thomas, and I know that's where a lot of people go for emergency information. So the city's Twitter, the city's Facebook, we are all going to be helping James, and he is the key person, but James is leading, the Emergency Operations Center at the city. So he's got a team, and we're all part of that team, and we're going to be putting out the correct information through these channels. So you'll see a lot of redundancy, and that's the point. And then we're hoping that our members of the community that are familiar with where to get the right information, that you are acting as ambassadors and sharing the correct information and correcting all those rumors that are out there. And it really takes a lot of people to do that, but that's the most effective way.
I have 3 things. One, when you change phones, don't forget to make sure all your apps went over to the other phone, because that's what you're talking about, a lot of apps here. Okay, number 2, you talk about the city of Ojai. I happen to live in Oakview, so I hope you're including us in there, but, and then the third thing was, where is the water and power on this, the departments?
Yeah, so a couple things there. So the question about Oakview. So we I think we explained this in the guide, or we explained it just prior to the last meeting on the guide, is that because we're the city of Ojai, we focus on the city, but we are trying to put a lot of information on there that's useful valley wide. You know, I think we don't, it would be foolish for us to think that, you know, getting information out to Oakview residents, Miners Oaks residents, East End would not be useful and helpful to all of us, because one of the points Robin made earlier that we heard from the hospital is every single person in the valley that's better prepared helps, because it's also less strain on the hospital. It's less strain on the animal services who had, you know, hundreds of animals brought to them, you know, during the fire. So our goal is to help get everybody in the valley prepared. But there are certain things, one of the questions Larry asked, you know, was, well, can we get the signs, you know, further out in the county? Well, we'd have to work with the county to do that. We can't just go drop a sign and, you know, say it's our power. Well, you know, we could. So another interesting story, you know, I'll give some people some real world anecdotes. During COVID, when COVID first hit and we put our signboard out and we said, you know, please practice distancing, you know, and all that, and everything was unknown. We were told by another agency that we were not allowed to do that. And so, like, you know, I know it sounds like, well, people would go, you know, well, who would have a problem with that? Well, we were told that. And we told the agency, it's an emergency. If you want to remove it, go ahead, but we're going to leave it. And so we did that. And so in an emergency, yeah, maybe we can try to take it out, but like when we're planning for what we can control in the city limits. So. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Not only whether it's a telephone tree through groups and everybody, got a list of 100 organizations here. They all have 22 members, and every one of them is 8,000. So telephone tree, visit a telephone, and physically, I go talk to 10 people. Sorry. Close. Okay, close. All right, sometimes. But that's the one way. I mean, the idea of having a test once a year and having the whole town and Miners Oak show up. This is a small town. If we can't pull that off, we're in trouble. Yeah. I mean, everyone's like, oh, there's no water. We can't get out. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And
now what do we do?
The phone tree is
that's what the phone's working.
And that's something that CERT actually does as part of their role too. So that's part of why we were trying to get CERT back activated. Yeah. Yeah.
I just want to express so much gratitude to you, James, and you, Robin, and the entire city staff and police and fire, Barry and Chief. It's just incredible that we've been able to make this happen. You know, James was told it could not be done, and you did it, James. So thank you so much. It's a huge step forward for Ojai. So thank you, Robin.
So those of us who went through the Thomas Fire can remember speaking for myself, a feeling of panic, because I remember getting a call from my daughter in Santa Barbara saying, you know, she was already at the hotel. She says, Mom, you've got to get out. If you burn to death, I'll be sad for the rest of my life. So in that moment, I gathered up my dogs and what I thought I needed, closed my windows, and I left. Of course, by then, all the hotels in Santa Barbara were full, and et cetera. But I think my point is this. I would think that your booklet covers this. If we have the emergency kit ready and simple things like closing the windows, like we can learn from the Oaks Hotel, they left all their windows open, and just all the little things, and how important it is that this is now ingrained now and not when it's already a moment where we as human beings where we might panic. That's just my
exactly
thoughts.
And I think, you know, we all have heard about all the new people moving to town and everything else, and you know, they haven't been through this. A lot of us have, so we're trying to get that information to everybody. Real quick on that point though, I know for me, I learned, and I think we take it for granted, but it's something that we put an emphasis on in our plan, and we want people to think about, is being prepared with your animals. Like you were mentioning going to a hotel. We had a lot of people that couldn't stay at a hotel because they didn't have the information for their animals that they needed to get. So we heard stories about people sleeping, in their cars at the fairgrounds because they needed to stay with their animals. We had the biggest thing for us at the emergency center. I was shocked when we started, we opened up the emergency center, call after call after call from people with horses who couldn't get them out of the valley. And so we had to put an all points bulletin out for anybody within 200 miles with the trailer, please come. But then the roads were crowded with trailers. So, I know for me, I talked to a lot of horse people. They've all said, we are going to have a trailer, between our group or whoever, we know someone with the trailer, we have a trailer ready, we're going to be prepared. But again, if you just moved here and you're not thinking about that, you're not going to be prepared. So for us, being prepared with your animals, we talk about having your medication, but your animal's medication, your important documents, your animal's important documents, all of those things. So yeah. Sure. I'll go Renee and then.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I want to add just a couple more things. I remember just a personal experience when we made it over to Nordoff for the evacuation that night, finally. I remember, and where's the fire department? Man, he's not here right now. I want him to hear this.
Yeah, this is coming.
But there's that sense of panic. You don't know what's going on. And I was able to calm down because I started standing next to a fire department person who you could tell he was fire. You could tell he was in communication with what is going on and where it was at. And I could immediately just sense that we're okay by hearing him and hearing what he was saying. I'm connected with some people who are in that ham radio club. And I know the ham radio club people can get into the same communication as the fire department people. Is that right? So that ham radio connection of, however they communicate and where that is and that to me is a very, very important part of being able to stay on top of it and know that we've got people who are in charge, they're talking to each other, and we're being connected. And that might be a difficult thing for you to know how to explain. But from my point of view, if we're going to go, you're in charge, we need to know people are connecting, they're talking, we're in charge, we've got information, everything's working. Not necessarily go here or do this, but that sense that the communication systems are working, all systems are go, we're following this closely, those kinds of assurances. So we know you guys are connected to each other. That to me is a really important part of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's all I have to say. So if we can get that kind of additional update, I don't know what you call it, that ham radio, we're connected, all systems are go.
Yeah.
We're ready.
Got it.
Getting back to the animals for a second. Are there going to be safe zones in our area for horses, for instance? In the Thomas Fire, our family has horses and ended up having to drive through a tunnel of fire on the 101, seriously, to get to the polo grounds in Carpinteria. And so that's obviously not acceptable. So I'm just wondering, is something going to be closer for us?
Yes. Yeah. So we're working on a couple of things. One of them was trying to work with the Humane Society to try to, be able to share that information. The other is somebody had asked a question about the refuge zone. And one of the ideas with that was we were trying to get an agreement through the county for the Sewell Park golf course parking lot. And as we've been working with the county, we've explained to them, we had issues where the parking lot at Nordoff was full and people were lined up with trailers, and we need somewhere in the valley where we can have them go for a while. And then when it's safe, get people out. So we are focusing on that as part of the plan. I think it's something that we talked about it being a living document. We are actively working on all that now. So I think as the plan comes out, that's something that we'll have updates for in the coming months, but those are goals for us for sure.
Thank you.
when we met, okay, we have lots of court here, that they have room for, it was more than 400 horses. And they were doing a lot of rescuing and going out and getting horses with their own trailers, but they are fire safe. They consider themselves completely fire safe. They said, they will not evacuate. They will, move animals to their site.
Because like the county wouldn't let you do that, or somebody wouldn't let you do this, have you identified locations in the city or in the area that are privately owned or even county owned where you just do it? Because if it's an emergency, I'm tired of hearing, oh, we're getting balkanized. This one, you can't do it because you can't do it. It's approved. Got to move the sign. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, it's an emergency. If some guy's got 20 acres and it's cleared, you go into it. You compensate him later. You cut him a check. That's all. That's what's the big deal? I mean, if you have a list of properties all over the area that you can just use, or you're going to take them. Owners volunteer. They're more than happy to. All you have to do is ask them.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
I know it's more work, but this is part of the community here. There's only 8,000 people living here.
right, but that's where I want to make sure we're on the same page. So within the city, we have locations.
Oh.
But the question was outside of the
Fine,
city,
there too.
right? So
Because you got all the way up to the grade.
Mhm.
You got all these places.
yeah.
Some of them are fire safe. Ask the owners.
Yeah. So that's where we talk about the partnership with the county, and that's where, we can work with
I
the
just
county.
listen to this. And I'm like, well, they got to tell me to move the sign.
Well, always an interesting place, though, right? Because we talk about can we do this in the city? Yes. Can we do it outside of the city?
Look what the whole government did for an emergency.
Mhm.
Okay, the whole country's upside down. Okay, so why can't we just try to put it back together?
Right. Yeah. And so, like I said, when we've had emergencies, like when we put out our notice boards on when the pandemic started and everything, we did those things. But there's a difference between, are we going to do them and do we have permission to do them? So if there's a fire, we'll do what we need to do. And exactly.
Well, you know the saying, do it now, ask permission later.
Yep.
Apologize later, however it goes. Yes, that's exactly it. Anyhow, what I was going to say is we're focusing on, going to hotels and things like that. I was very fortunate. There were several people who said, come to my house. So I think what maybe we need to focus on and get out to the people is you need somebody who you can go to, not a hotel, not necessarily campground. If you have somebody in the area, make that arrangement with them so that they know you're on the way, even though you can't text them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as soon as I got out of the valley, I got so many texts. It wasn't even funny, but I saw the smoke. I actually saw the fire and went back, got my dog, told my neighbor I was leaving. So they knew, and I had the dog with me, like you said, you have to have a plan, a 1, 2, 3 kind of thing. A literal checklist is what we need. A literal checklist that people can sit there.
That's a perfect segue because I think we have a literal checklist in the guide. Yeah, but so we're with you, and we're with you, and we'll start sharing that. The plan is once it's adopted, we're going to the council to get it adopted in September. Once it's adopted, we're going to try to take it out and put it everywhere. And hopefully, even if somebody just reads the guide and then tears out the checklist and throws the rest of the guide away, hopefully we're helping people get better prepared. Yeah.
Just a little bit further with the tourists.
Mhm.
I know I guess I really do think there's got to be quite a coordination with every hotel room. And I do think maybe there should be a meeting, all of them together, every manager. So there's some coordination. I think there could be a lot of confusion. You almost do a drill with them in terms of where do you go? I mean, I really think there's got to be clarity there because you're going to have, we have 900,000 tourists here and we're less than 8,000. I mean, who knows how many thousand are there that night? I mean, I think that's a huge, I think it could be, we could really make it work or it could be a huge problem.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We are planning to roll out to the hotels, but the idea of a meeting, like a stakeholder meeting with the hotels, I think that's something.
It's very, because if you have panic tourists,
Mhm.
it's going to screw up all of us.
Yeah.
They don't, I think it's really important.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks.
We're able to share the high-low siren on video as requested by Chief, if you'd
Do you
like.
wanna-
Yeah.
Do we need to cover? Yeah, I have a feeling it's going to be loud. Hello, I'm Ojai City Manager James Vega. This week, the week of December 7th, 2020, marks the 3-year anniversary of the Thomas Fire, which was at the time the largest fire in California state history. The fire severely impacted the Ojai Valley, as we all remember, and caused the evacuation of many of our residents. We have looked for ways since then to improve fire safety and disaster preparedness, and we wanted to take this opportunity to tell the community about a new improvement, which is the new high-low sirens. These are special sirens put on the police vehicles to inform residents that an evacuation is occurring. And so when you hear those sirens, you'll know to start getting prepared to evacuate. The Ventura County Sheriff's Office and our Police Chief, Jose Rivera, have provided the following video with an example of that siren and some additional information. Thank you for watching.
That unique sounding siren is known as the high-low siren. The Ventura County Sheriff's Office has implemented this siren to alert residents to the need to evacuate during an emergency. The frequency and intensity of wildfires has increased in California, and every second counts when evacuating. People often tune out regular police sirens, requiring deputies to go door to door to inform residents of an evacuation. This high-low siren allows us to quickly alert entire neighborhoods that they're in immediate danger. If you hear this siren in your community, you need to evacuate immediately. To register for emergency notifications in your area, please visit www.vcalert.org.
That video was from 2020.
So that's the siren, and my understanding is those are now installed countywide on all sheriff's vehicles. So again, when we talk about trying to get information out that's useful to everyone, or even if somebody from Ojai goes to Ventura or Camarillo is a sheriff's jurisdiction, and they hear that siren, they should know what it means. They should know that there's an evacuation. So, and also within the valley, that's not limited to just within the city of Ojai. So I think those one.
Did you address the city, the power and water?
Oh,
know where they are in this?
Yeah, thank you. So we do communicate from our emergency operations center. We tend to communicate with Southern California Edison when there's emergencies. We communicate with the water districts. If you remember during the Thomas Fire, they notified the city that there was going to be a boil water advisory. And so we started getting that information out to the public, and they do as well, but we try to help make sure that, again, just posting the information in more and more of these places to try to reach everybody. So we communicate with them. When you look at someone like Edison, it's usually pretty much they're telling us what they're doing, and we try to help get that information out. There's not a whole lot of we don't get a lot of say over what Edison does, unfortunately, but we work with them and through our emergency operations center and our emergency. Yeah, we do. And so there's the Edison, more clearly, Edison has a like a group where they have a public safety advisory group that we have points of contact with. Each city has contact with. The water district's a little more complicated because we have so many water districts. I think last I had heard we have something like 32 water districts in the valley. So for us, typically we make contact with Casitas immediately, and then we'll hear from Ventura Rivers, kind of interspersed in there. We don't really deal with all the other water districts. So. But actually, that's a good point. Do we include Casitas and Edison contact points in our plan? Okay, yeah, that's something we'll add to the plan.
The other thing that I know was a source of a lot of frustration is if we're leaving, which way do we go? And I'm used to doing webcams when I travel up to Oregon, because I grew up in the Siskiyous, where when you get snow, you got to know what the Siskiyou Pass is like before you go over the pass. You just have to. And I'm just wondering, I know it's an emergency, but does the police, fire have webcam kinds of things that show access points or breakdown points or traffic jams? And is there some way that the public can see those, or they get reported to us? We know from this webcam that this highway is open, highway is open.
So I'll look to police and fire to maybe give any more detail that I don't have, though. We have partnered, and I think police and fire as well, with Southern California Edison, where Southern California Edison has webcams now that they provide access to government agencies to see and use during emergencies. And so we had met with them about a year ago, and they were providing that access to us. But I don't think that there's one open to the general public unless Chief Rivera, Chief Parker knows something.
As far as webcams, no, we don't have those available. We don't have any up. Pardon me? We do in certain points around the county that are being monitored. But as far as like, say we had a fire here in Ojai, God forbid, but we don't have any webcams set up where we can actually monitor roadways or anything like that. And really, during an emergency, you're evacuating people. Are you going to take staff out to set up cameras? No. The best source of information for evacuations is the information that's being put out by VC Alert or any information that is being put out regarding traffic, because a traffic route may close up at any given point, and we may redirect people to a different route. The best source of information is the information that's being put up by VC Alert. Fire department, they're fantastic at setting up command posts, setting up media appearances to put out updated information. These guys are professionals at that, and we rely on them to come in. They put out regular media information. Either on TV, it's being broadcast over the radio. That way everybody has current information on what's going on, which way a fire is going. It could be a fire, it could be some other disaster, but they will give you extremely good information. I was very impressed during the Thomas fire. We had the command post set up in the fairgrounds. I was actually part of that. In just the technology that we have now, they had aerial drones flying over the fire, and they were giving, really real-time information. And we can see the direction that the fire is being, the course that it's going. And they take into account the wind direction and everything to kind of guide them and prepare them. Yeah, this neighborhood over here is going to be affected in the next hour, so we need to get those folks out of here. So it's the information that provided is tremendous and excellent. So as far as traffic, we rely on them, which way the fire is going or any given disaster. We determine what's the best route, the safest route for people to leave. And that way it doesn't affect emergency crews that are coming in with equipment. So we kind of may have a route and start routing people one direction, and the next hour it may change and we have to route people a different direction for whatever the reason may be. So it's really important that we just kind of tune into the resources that we do have. We have a lot of resources here in the city, the county, for updated information as well as traffic. CHP also has a website. I have them on my phone, so whenever I get stuck in traffic somewhere, I usually go to the website to find out where the traffic jam is and what the issue is. And I may just reroute to a different direction at that point. So no. I'm sure it is a funny thing, but a lot of it could be, if it's Caltrans jurisdiction where they put up their own cameras for traffic related issues. That could be something that correct. But as far as the sheriff's department is concerned, we do not have traffic webcams set up or anything. Correct. We do have cameras in key areas around the county, but not to monitor traffic. No.
I have a question that may not be relevant anymore, but on this checklist, once you have evacuated, I'm curious, do you need sometimes documentation to re-enter an evacuated area? And if so, what documentation? Like years ago, it used to be that you would bring a utility bill to prove you lived in the town, but all my bills are e-bills now. So do e-bills work?
Oh, that's a good question. I think we actually had that happen during Thomas Fire where there were certain neighborhoods where we're only letting the residents in. So I guess I'll call the Jeep back up. I don't know exactly how they did that. So.
Yeah, that's something pretty simple. If you have an app that you can prove, hey, this is a bill that I pay, and look, it has my address, my name on it, and stuff like that, that's fine. The main purpose of doing that is to keep people that don't belong to that neighborhood from coming in and causing some type of crime, looting, and things like that. So we want to just keep the residents in there. So, but anything you can show as proof, I have all my bills on my phone, that's how I pay them. So you just bring it up, you bring up your current statement, and that should be good enough. Yeah, you're welcome.
Just to circle back to that webcam idea, I think it's really important for all of us to support police and fire as much as we can. And as we know, people can do some crazy things during emergencies, and we don't want to confuse people and have people go rogue. So VC alert, VC alert, VC alert. James and I cannot say that enough times, right? And yes, VC emergency, VC emergency, VC emergency. And, James and I are in charge when the emergency hits, and we want the messaging to be crystal clear. So once again, VC emergency, VC emergency, VC emergency. And we're just going to keep repeating that, James, right? Ad nauseum.
Yeah, it's in the guide several times. We'll keep adding it.
And just really hitting that message hard so that in case when the emergency hits, everyone knows that. And back to your point, and the point I made earlier, it's those 6 hours that are really key. So making sure everybody's animals, you mentioned medication for everybody, we're all dialed in.
I was pleasantly surprised, and maybe it's because we have an informed group here, but when we started and we asked where people get their information, I would say 5 years ago, the first thing would be Facebook. That was what we heard during the Thomas Fire. Everybody, I saw it on Facebook. It's on Facebook. Why aren't you on Facebook? And so we are trying to have a more active role on Facebook. I think we've built as a city of 8,000, we've built our social media following from about 150 to back in the Thomas Fire to about 2,200 or something now. So part of that is so that we have that tool when we need it. But I also think, this group showed that people are figuring out the official sources and they're knowing where to look, and we're trying to help do that. And that's, when we say VC emergency and VC alert over and over. The one last comment I'll make on VC alert is that if you've moved, you should remember to go change your address in it, because you'll get alerts for the wrong location. You won't get the alerts for where you're at. So
this is very nice, and I think this is great. But what happens, this is like a build up to a fire. This is like you see it coming. Okay. What happens when it's the big one? Call it whatever it is, right? You're out of town. The mayor's not here. No, you'll be here. But it'll be the first time. I live across the street. I had to ask Deborah to come over last time, so please, let's not get started. Okay. But the idea of, do you have enough people when you need them when it's cataclysmic, because if you have employees who live out of town, they're worried about their families. You got people can't come in, you end up, instead of looking for 20 people, you end up with 6. Is there a way for the community? Again, we have a lot of smart, retired, not retired people here who have all this, many of the skills you might need. Build a database of your people here so that you can call on them, or they'll volunteer and you already know what they can do. So you can fill the slots, because if this is cataclysmic,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
now what?
Yeah,
okay, who do we
Yeah.
listen to? I mean, it's like, what is the backup? Anyway, thank you.
So I'll give,
Yeah,
yes,
but that's
sir.
relying on somebody else.
I'll give 2 points to that. Well, but there you go, right? It's the first thing. Do we have enough to help you when the emergency happens? Well, our response is be prepared, Larry. Get ready now. Because if the big one happens tomorrow and no one's prepared, we don't have enough people. If the big one happens tomorrow and people are prepared and they're able to take care of themselves and we are able to help the people who truly need it, we have enough people. Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Well, that's what, to Chief Parker's point, where he said, the expectation should be when the emergency happens, you need to be prepared to get through that initial period where we're trying to get everybody set up and everything else. And so that's a big part of what we're trying to do. And that's why we have the get prepared checklists and everything else. The second point is, yes, we're trying to reactivate CERT. And I know you're saying it's other people, but CERT is the group that is responsible for that. Yeah. And so we are trying to get CERT reactivated. And so we are hoping to have that deeper pool of volunteers so that we can respond. But the big thing for everybody is we just need everybody to take a little bit of time, be prepared, know what to do, and that will help us better help you. So.
I just wanted to bring up one point. It's not necessarily related to an emergency. It's more about how to be a respectful participant in a community meeting. And so I don't know if any of you here have ever heard of a talking stick. So this, in my mind, the mic is the talking stick, and we're all passionate about this and we all want to talk, but there's a person walking around and paying attention to who's raising their hand. And it's just respectful to allow people that have raised their hand to actually have the opportunity to speak. And you'll know, if you raise your hand, you'll know when it's your turn to speak, because you'll get the talking stick, which is the mic.
I have no idea what time it is, so I guess we'll take a couple more questions. And then before we take the last couple of questions, just a reminder, we are asking people, and for people watching this, to keep sending us feedback, send us things we missed, and we're going to finalize our plan using all this feedback. So there's still an opportunity, and right when we are ready to leave, we'll repeat the email address for that. So, but anyway.
Okay, there was just one more thing. We were talking about CERT and everything. Like I said, I worked for AT&T. I had a badge, which meant if there was an emergency, they would let me through. We need to figure out something for our volunteers. So say I'm in Ventura, but I'm a volunteer and you need me here. I need the police to let me get through. So yeah, I know it's fairly simple, but yeah. If the police don't know that badge means anything, then they're not going to let me through. That's all.
Yeah, it's a really good point. We've been working on a lot of these things over the last 5 years, and so we haven't mastered that for volunteers yet. But as a city, our city employees did not have any sort of identification during the last emergency. We have now implemented a system where every employee on their first day gets their emergency services badge and gets the speech from me about how they are emergency services workers and they are expected to report during an emergency. So that is something we've worked on, and I think as far as volunteers, I think it's something that we're going to try to work on as part of the CERT process. Thank you. Thank you. I guess that's a perfect time to end. Yeah, exactly. But so we have an email address here for those watching who maybe can't see it. It's Robin, ROBIN Godfrey, 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 at ojai.ca.gov. If you have any ideas that you didn't hear or anything you want to make sure we're thinking about, send it to that email address, and we'll try to incorporate all the feedback as we move the guide forward. So, and I'll let Chief Parker wrap it up.
This will be really quick, but I just wanted to, first of all, thank you for showing up today. Your city's doing a wonderful job. I appreciate it. Appreciate it. But it really shows how much you guys care. Everyone who's in this room, the time that you're taking out of your busy day to be here. But I did want to just close the loop on a couple legitimate questions that were raised. The chain of command with the fire department and sheriff. We actually don't use that term chain of command, or whether we use unified, meaning together. So sheriff and fire, we're hooked at the hip together. That's how close we are. And that includes the city of Ojai. That is the only way for this to work. And I mentioned before, it's collaboration. And so through these events, we've learned a lot. We're not perfect. We don't always do it just right. We're humans. But our goal is to be the best that we can and to be the most efficient. So through that collaboration is how we do that. If we have an event that's, let's just say at 2 o'clock in the morning, it kicks off. Obviously, the chief of police and myself are going to know about it immediately. And we, in turn, pick up the phone, and then our next phone call is directly to Mr. Vega. We give him the parameters of the event. We give him the scope. We'll let him know what the fire department objectives are, what our control objectives are, and we'll immediately start working on an evacuation plan with the sheriff's department. So we'll establish an incident command post where we will all be together. The fire department, we're going to look at what is our highest human risk. Sometimes it's actually not the people, it could be infrastructure. It could be power lines that are the biggest risk. If we lose the power lines, we all lose electricity. So maybe those initial resources are going to go protect infrastructure, and the second wave is going to concentrate on evacuations. Okay, so our strategies can change, but we get together and we're going to talk strategy, and we're going to share that with the city immediately. So that's just a little bit about that question about chain of command. At any time during an event, if the city of Ojai spools up their DOC, which is their operation center, the county OES will also spool up to support the city. So if resources are getting short in the city, the county is going to assist. Okay, that's how good government works, and that's the plan. That's the discussion. We have processes in place for that. Information. I think we've hit where you can get your information, but the question is, where's that information coming from? It is coming directly from the incident command post, directly to county OES, who is posting that information. We try to do it. It's happening real time. Just really quick before I get to you. It's Office of Emergency Services through the Ventura County Sheriff's Department. Okay. So that's real-time information. And what you're going to find when things are working the way that they should, all communication platforms are saying the same thing. It's the same sheet of music. No matter where you go, it's the same sheet of music. If you see something that is not saying that, that should be your red light that goes, why? I'm not going to pay attention to this one over here that's different than these 7 official statements. Okay. Information is happening so fast. It is like a quick river. It is changing immediately. If you pay attention to something else, that information becomes stale and outdated. When information is not timely, efficient, and effective, anxiety grows. Okay, so we want to create for everyone a cool, collective environment so that you can succeed in evacuations. So we're trying to get out ahead of that for everyone. The evacuation plan, I wanted to touch on that. That was brought up as well. We, as fire commanders, we will look at our tactics in fighting the fires to keep the evacuation routes open. That's one of our priorities. If we can't keep the evac routes open, we're not going to be successful. So we will move resources or look at our firefighting tactics in order to keep those evacuation routes open. That's always a priority for us. Once the big machine gets up, it's all spooled up, and we've got a large incident command base. We have daily cooperators meetings. So those cooperators are Edison, the phone company, the city, anyone who plays a part within that disaster is at the cooperators meeting, so that all agencies are getting the same information and all agencies have a voice at that cooperators meeting. We need to hear from Casitas Water what their issues are. We need to hear from the city of Ojai. The city of Ojai needs to hear about Casitas. So it's a large meeting that happens once a day. And then lastly, I want to close the loop for our folks with disabilities that government refers to as the DAFN community, and that's folks with disabilities. There were some gaps during the Thomas Fire. We realized that. And so we, as the county, have made major strides in making sure that our folks with the disabilities get the same timely information as everyone else. So we're reaching out to see, and you might have already got this, addresses, who's where. If you haven't, please contact, I'm going to push it to county OES. Feel free to reach out to them as well. And they're working with the Human Services Department with the County of Ventura. That is available to you. And then lastly, for information, we need to make sure that our information flow goes out in Spanish. Okay, not just English. We have a very diverse community. Everyone has that right to public information. So I just wanted to mention that as well. So again, great job. I said I would be short, so back to you.
I'm going to add Spanish to our list because that is a key thing that we need to make sure we're aware of. So, we'll put other languages because there's probably a few we should think of. Okay. But so I think that's it. So thank you everybody for coming today. And again, there's opportunities to keep giving feedback, but thank you for coming out on a Wednesday morning and spending your time with us. Thanks.